Year 1, Episode 7, Rival. A true competitor views a rival as an equal, not as an enemy. John Cena. Connor saw that it was starting to rain and covered Layla. He walked toward the black SUV Headmistress Tate sent for them, and Alex looked at him oddly. "Are we bringing extra luggage?" He teased. A growl rumbled in Connor's chest. "No. She's from the school, and we are taking her back. She isn't just some girl, Lex." Alex looked at Faith, and she sighed. "For once, my brother's right for a change. From what I gathered during our short conversation, she was born a Monday and turned for the first time." She explained, and Alex shrugged. He opened the door, took Layla into his arms, and Connor slid into the back seat. Alex gently put Layla in his lap and closed the door. He and Faith put their bags in the trunk and slid into the seat in front of Connor and Layla. "Is everyone comfortable?" asked the driver and Alex. Faith and Connor nodded. "All right, we should be at the university in about 25 minutes, so sit back and enjoy the ride." Connor nodded, and Faith and Alex relaxed in their seat. Connor felt Layla stir, and he pulled the coat from her face. She looked at him with sparkling green eyes, and he smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Is this your jacket?" she asked, and he nodded, giving her a questioning look. "Yes, but you don't have to keep it on. I figured since Faith forgot to leave a shirt for you, my jacket would keep you warm." Faith scoffed and shook her head. "I'm sorry, girl," she said, and Layla shook her head, burying her face in Connor's jacket and inhaling deeply. Connor gave his sister an odd look, and she snickered, watching the girl. "Your coat smells so good. Can I borrow it tonight?" Layla asked, giving Connor an innocent look, and the alpha's heart melted. He felt a tingling sensation in the back of his mind and inhaled sharply, feeling her fingertips slip under his button-down shirt. He closed his eyes, feeling a new sensation he'd never felt before, and closed his eyes, blowing a slow breath. "Connor?" He opened his eyes, and Layla watched his eyes shimmer. He felt her tracing the outline of his tattoo, and a new calming sensation washed over him. What did it all mean? He stared into her eyes and saw the rim of red and orange. He thought she was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen in his lifetime, and in human years, he would be half a century old. "Connor?" Connor looked at Layla, and their eyes shimmered together. She looked at his wounded face and frowned. "I'm sorry I scratched you," she whispered as her eyes started to droop, and Connor adjusted her head on his shoulder. She tilted her head and looked at him. He moved his hand, holding her waist, and turned his head toward her. "If they scar, I will still think you are beautiful." Connor chuckled, and Faith and Alex smiled. Connor tightened his arms around her, and Layla fit perfectly against him. She sighed contently, and her eyes closed. He rested his cheek on her head and looked at his sister. Faith looked at Layla and searched her brother's eyes. "And if you hurt her, I will kick your ass. She's too sweet for you to break." She snapped, and he lifted his head. "I doubt I would ever have a chance. She's beautiful and probably has a boyfriend," he said, and his sister and Alex scoffed. "Like that stopped you before." Alex snorted, and Connor growled. Alex faced forward and quietly snickered. Faith sighed, leaned on the back of the seat, and gave her brother a thoughtful look. "Just get to know her first before you decide that she's going to be your flavor of the week." Alex busted out laughing, and even the driver laughed. Faith smirked at her brother, and Connor shook his head. "You just love calling me a whore, don't you?" Faith grinned, nodded, and faced forward. She gasped, looking out the window, and she pointed. "Look, there it is." Connor and Alex looked out the window, and Connor sighed. He was only going to school because his mother asked him to go before she died. His plan was to get this over with quickly so he could head back to the bar and back to living his life. "Tyler?" yelled Cassidy, running across the yard, and Tyler looked at her. "She's not in school at the parking lot," she said breathlessly, and he looked into the woods. "She ran in through there," he said, pointing, and Cassidy looked at him confused. "How do you know that?" she asked. He gave her a clever look and grinned, chewing his gum. "Werewolf, remember? I have excellent tracking skills." Cassidy snickered and shook his head. "So what do we do? Should we go after her?" Suddenly Tyler smelt something in the air and turned his head toward the school. "What is that?" he mumbled, and Cassidy looked at him in question. "What is what?" I don't know what you're sensing, Tyler. I'm not a canine, she exclaimed. There's something coming, and I don't think it's good. He breathed, and Cassidy's eyes widened. Guys? Yelled Bailey, running toward them, and Tyler and Cassidy looked at her. Come to the front gate. Someone found Layla, she exclaimed breathlessly, and they ran toward the school. Are they the new students we were expecting tomorrow morning? Asked Maya's assistant, opening an umbrella as it started raining, and the headmistress nodded. Does Tyler know my brother and sister were enrolled? Asked Cody, and Maya shook her head. I thought you would tell him. After all, you're his best friend, and Connor and Faith are your family. Cody swallowed hard and kicked himself in the ass. Cody was just a pup when his father passed, giving his oldest brother, Connor, the responsibility of being alpha, but Tyler hated his brother and never could figure out why. A black car pulled up to the school, and Cody saw his brother exit, the vehicle with Layla cradled in his arms. He noticed the hideous scratches across his face and saw his sister and Alex standing behind them. Tyler, Cassidy, and Bailey ran up, and Cody sighed heavily. Mom! Yelled Tyler, and Maya pointed. He looked down the driveway and saw the black vehicle pulled up. He watched as Faith Lancer and Alex Merson got out and opened the backseat door. He saw Alex take someone in his arms, and Connor slid out of the SUV. He took the person wrapped in a large jacket, adjusted her in his arms, and Tyler saw Layla's copper hair. What is he doing here? He growled, and his mother's eyes shimmered. Tyler's eyes faded, and he looked at her in question. Mr. and Ms. Lancer and Mr. Merson will be joining us. They applied and were accepted by the council, she said calmly. What? He scoffed, crossing his arms and looking at Connor, carrying Layla's unconscious body. What's he doing with her? Maya looked at Connor and blew a breath. Bringing her back. Apparently our little Hellcat evolved and Connor found her. Tyler sneered as Connor approached, and Connor rolled his eyes. Tyler noticed the deep scratches in Layla's wounded stomach and wondered if it were he and Layla battling in the woods. Hello, Headmistress Tate. Thank you for letting us come this evening, said Connor, and Maya looked at the scratches. Are you all right? Yeah, I scratched myself on a tree branch. I'll be good as new soon. No worries. He lied, and Faith looked at her brother oddly. Why would he lie about the scratches? Well, I appreciate you finding our curious little feline. I have to ask, was she beautiful? Asked Maya, and Connor cleared his throat. She's the most gorgeous creature I've seen in a long time, he said, and Maya smiled, rubbing Layla's head. Thank you for finding her. She is like family to me. Layla has been having some difficulty adjusting, she said, and Faith nodded. I know. She and I talked right before she, raw, she said, and Connor elbowed her. What? I'm sure if they're family, she would want to know. Maya looked at Faith and smiled. Thank you, dear, she said, and Faith smiled. Connor chuckled, adjusting Layla, and her head rested against his chest. Tyler scowled, taking a step forward, and Cassidy grabbed his arm. Keep your cool, she whispered, and he relaxed. He hated banshees. They were the only creatures in the supernatural world that could calm any living soul with a touch of their hand. Now, where can I take this gorgeous creature to rest so we can get started? Asked Connor, and Maya turned to Bailey. Bailey, will you escort Mr. Lancer to the suite and then bring him to my office? Yes, ma'am. Tyler scowled and stepped forward. I'll take her. I don't need you to keep my mother waiting, he said condescendingly, and Connor chuckled, looking at Tyler up and down. Down, boy. She's in excellent hands. He sneered, and Tyler snarled. Maya sighed, shook her head, and gave her son a disapproving look. Boys, Tyler, you and Cassidy will escort Faith and Alex to my office. Cody is waiting for you, she said, rubbing her temple. Tyler nodded, sneered at Connor, and walked away with his mother, Alex, Faith, and Cassidy. Bailey looked at Connor, shrugged, and waved him to walk with her. He chuckled and followed Bailey. Tyler looked at his mother, and Maya gave him a knowing look. We have bigger problems. If solved the way we planned, then little problems will go away too, she whispered, and Tyler only nodded. Faith, Alex, Tyler and Cassidy will take you to my office, and I will meet you there, said Maya, turning and walking a different way. So, Connor, what happened to her? Asked Bailey as she and Connor walked down the hallway, and he looked at her, I'm not sure. You should talk to her when she wakes up, he said, and she made a face. But I am awake, whispered Layla, looking up at Connor, and he smiled. Yes, my gorgeous, curious feline, but you are weak and need to rest, he said softly. Bailey rubbed Layla's arm and smiled. I'll explain later, Bailey, Layla said, and Bailey nodded. Layla touched Connor's beard and ran her fingertips through it. It's so soft, she said. He felt the calming sensation and blew a breath. How was she doing this to him? The tiny girl could bring him to his knees with one touch, and he knew nothing about her. I don't like my beard being touched, but please don't stop, he whispered. Layla and Bailey giggled, and Layla scratched gently under his chin. His body shivered, and he looked at her as she bit her bottom lip. I'm sorry I hurt you, she said, and Bailey looked at him. I knew you were lying, she said with purple eyes, and Connor clenched his teeth. Mind fairies, he growled. Layla hummed, and he looked at her oddly. That was kind of sexy. Do it again, she said, leaning her head back, and he smiled. He growled softly, making his chest rumble, and Layla grinned as her eyes drooped. You're so handsome and smell amazing, she said, and drifted to sleep. Her hand slipped from his beard down his chest, and her head rested against his arm. Bailey looked at him, and he shook his head. She's just tired, he said. Bailey nodded, opened the suite door, and pointed to Layla's room. Connor carried her inside and put her in bed. He left her snuggled in his jacket, covered her with a blanket, and kissed her forehead. I don't know who you are, but I hope you give me the chance to learn everything about you, he whispered, rubbed her cheek, and left the room. Faith? Exclaimed Cody, hugging his sister, and Tyler smiled. So, how did you convince my mother to let you and Connor come here? Asked Tyler, pulling Faith close, and she laughed, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. We actually raised enough money for tuition applied like normal creatures. And it's true. Money talks and bullshit walks. Tyler grinned, holding her waist, and she grinned at him. I thought you'd be more happy I came, she whispered, and he squeezed her hips. Oh, I am, he growled in her ear, and Faith laughed. Faith and Tyler got along and had a few intimate nights together. Faith didn't understand why he didn't like her older brother, nor did she care. She liked Tyler. So, why do you hate Connor so much? Asked Alex, biting into an apple. He was tall and muscular, with dark hair, dark eyes, and a tattoo on his neck. The mark looked like a fancy letter Z with 2 lines through the center, and it was the brand of his old pack. Tyler thought momentarily and shrugged. For starters, he has no morals. He's a whore, and he kills for fun, he said, and Faith wrinkled her nose. You know him so well, she said, and Cassidy laughed. Maybe you should understand situations before you make assumptions, Beta, growled Connor, and Tyler sneered. Maybe I don't care to know Connor. Connor snickered, smelling Layla's scent on him, and he sighed. And that's why you're not an alpha, pup, he said with crimson eyes. And what's that supposed to mean? Asked Tyler, feeling his blood boil, and Connor snorted. I mean you don't have what it takes, he said, raising an eyebrow. Tyler snarled with glowing yellow eyes and bared his sharp teeth. Connor chuckled and growled. Boys, enough, snarled Maya, walking into the office and closing the door. She faced the 5 students and cleared her throat. Now, before I send Tyler and Cassidy back to their suites, let me make myself clear. We are all on the same side and stronger together. I feel a greater evil is coming, and we must figure this out together. Put your differences aside and learn to get along. I don't want to see any of you in my office for fighting. Is that understood? Yes, ma'am, said Tyler, and Maya looked at Connor. Crystal, he said, nodding. Now go to your rooms, and Cassidy, let me know the instant Layla wakes up. Cassidy nodded, noticed Connor smelling his shirt, made a face, and left the room. What a weirdo, she said, and Tyler chuckled. Tyler followed Cassidy back to her suite and went into Layla's room. He spent the night with her, and it was the next morning. He rubbed the bridge of her nose and forehead and sighed. I'll be right here when you wake up, Lay, he whispered, and heard her blow a breath. Why did you leave after Peter confessed? She asked, and he looked at her with wide eyes. You're awake? he exclaimed. Layla rolled on top of him and covered his mouth. Shout before someone hears you. Tyler chuckled, brushing copper strands behind her ear, and Layla sighed, searching his eyes. I'm still mad at you, she said, and his smile faded. Lay, I'm sorry, he said, rubbing her sides. So I turned into a cat, and you turned into a dog, and now the Hellcat did the eye flashy thing with Connor. This shit does not make any sense, he said, pressing on his shoulders. He ran his fingers down her ribs and gave her an odd look. Eye flashy thing? Never mind that. What if I'm still in a coma, and I'm going to wake up and everything and everyone disappears? Tyler chuckled and rubbed her back, and Layla sat on him. She wrinkled her nose, and he rubbed her thighs. I don't know what to tell you. You believe I'm real, don't you? She looked at him, bit her lower lip, and shrugged. I don't know. Maybe we're both dead, she suggested, and Tyler laughed, rolling them over. He looked at her, rubbed her cheek, and gave her a thoughtful look. So, if this is your dream, then why are we lying around wasting it? Why aren't we out there running through the forest or dancing with the fairies? Layla raised her eyebrows, and Tyler nodded. Let's go, she squealed, grabbing his hand and pulling him off the bed. Cassidy and Bailey watched Layla and Tyler run out of the suite, and Cassidy shook her head. Hey, where are you going? We have to tell Tate you're awake, yelled Bailey. But Tyler and Layla were gone. Come on, she sighed, and Cassidy shook her head. Let them enjoy themselves, she said, giving her a knowing look. The girls laughed and ran to the window. Layla pulled Tyler to the shimmering tree and leaped into the air. The tiny fairies and ribbons of magic appeared, and she inhaled deeply as her wings stretched from her back. Tyler stepped onto the rock and twirled next to her. Layla grinned as tiny ribbons of yellow, sparkling magic swirled around his body, and he phased into a muscular black wolf. She smiled, landed on the ground, and phased into a beautiful black panther, and the wings disappeared. She pounced on the ground and swished her tail. She walked toward him, purred, and rubbed against his furry side. First the wolf whimpered and softly barked. The fairies danced around them and giggled. Run, they chanted, and the panther and wolf ran across the schoolyard. They reached the end, turned around, and raced toward the forest but didn't stop. They sped through the forest, feeling free, and the panther roared. The wolf howled with her, and the two animals ran faster. After a while, the panther and the wolf turned around and raced back to the school. The panther picked up speed, nearing the forest edge, and leaped into the air. The wolf skidded to a stop, watching the flaming wings appear, and the panther soared across the sky. Ribbons of fire magic circled the panther's body, and the shimmering fairies flew behind, leaving a colorful trail. The wolf walked into the schoolyard and saw students walking out of the school, staring at the flying Hellcat. Ribbons of yellow magic swirled around the wolf, and Tyler phased into his human form. Seeing his mother, Bailey, and Cassidy staring in awe, he chuckled and walked toward them. Maya smiled, and a tear slid down her cheek. Hey, said Tyler, and Maya looked at her son. How did you get her to finally give in? She asked. She just needed to run with her best friend and let go, he said, and his mother gave him a thoughtful look. Have you been promoted back to your title? She asked. Tyler chuckled, looked at Layla, and nodded. I think so. Everyone pointed at the flying feline spinning in the sky, and Layla phased into her human form. She learned how to protect her clothes with a spell. The students cheered, and the fairies giggled. Layla grinned, seeing Maya, Tyler, Bailey, and Cassidy, and hovered above them, flapping her wings. They smiled, and Layla noticed Connor, Faith, and Alex staring at her from Connor's and Alex's suite. She looked at Connor, smiled, and waved her fingers. Connor waved back, and Faith looked at him strangely. Why, you like her? She whispered. Yeah, maybe I do. He sighed, and his sister smiled. Layla happily sighed, spun in a circle, and landed. Everyone stared at her flaming wings, and she snickered. You are truly remarkable, said Maya, and Layla bowed. She's the Alpha Hellcat Dragon Spark. The fairies giggled and disappeared with Layla's wings. Tyler ran to her, grabbed her hips, lifted her, and spun in a circle. You did it, he exclaimed, and she giggled as he spun her.
I can see the stars align.